Alright, we talked about ADC, now it's time to cover AP Kaisa mid lane. So first of all, AP Kaisa is not dead whatsoever. Don't get baited by Right's small nerf that barely did anything to impact AP Kaisa power, since to this day you can still one-shot ADCs at 2 items and do up to 3k damage with 2 Ws, even more this season. So like for ADC, we'll cover how Kaisa mid functions, the best build, the matchups, and finally some gameplay. Just remember that this guide might change over the years, so if you don't want to miss out on any balance changes, make sure to subscribe and let's get started. So if you ever feel bored of playing ADC because the role is not really fun, or you just start to deal with support and decide to last pick Sona when you're playing Kaisa, well, mid lane is your second best option. Your objective is really simple. You mainly want to scale and play safe for the first 15 minutes until you get 2 items and your W evolution, and after that you become one of the best poke champions in the game with double the range of champions like Jace and Zerat, while being able to jump in with your ultimate to one-shot enemies. And I'm being serious here, there are games where AP Kaisa feels like the most OP'est thing in League. The two biggest drawbacks of this pick is 1, the gameplay that can feel a bit boring since you spam W over and over again, and second, you're really reliant on your team to actually win, because even if you have a ton of damage, you still need a decent team to not only finish the kills, put the vision down, push your towers, and get objectives. Now, compared to ADC, mid lane Kaisa is a bit more difficult to pull off during the laning phase, since you're playing a low range ADC versus mages that can poke you forever and assassins that can burst you down in one combo. So it really comes down to how good you are at positioning and how comfortable you are in difficult matchups, but after you get W evolution, the playstyle is quite easy. So overall, AP Kaisa mid is really a strong pick in the mid to late game with difficult laning phase. Alright, let's now talk about the builds. First off, runes. For the runes, it's quite simple. You want to run a classic fleet page with fleet footwork into life, into haste, plus cut down, and as your secondary, you want to run in most of your games absolute focus and gathering the storm. Now, if you're facing a hard poke matchup like Wei or Syndra, for example, you can also run as your secondary Second Wind and Overgrowth. Lose a bit of scaling, but you get way more sustain in lane, which should make the matchup a bit more comfortable for you. In terms of items, you have 2 options. The recommended build pass in 2025 is to go for the classic scaling Mamine build. Now, one thing you need to know is that Mamine was nerfed in Split 3, with its mana to AD conversion ratio going down to 2% from 2.5%. This means that with Mamine alone, you cannot get Q evolution at level 9 anymore. This is why you will need to buy a core when you play Kaisa mid. So with that said, here's how the build works. You start with Durham Blade, and then at around 900 to 1000 gold, you want to force a back. Even if it's a bad back, it doesn't matter. You really want to back to buy your tier, your call, and potions. Then after that, it's standard with Mamine, Ludens, Shadow Flame, Deadcap, and Voice Staff. As for the boots, if you have access to the new tier 3 boots, you should finish them before doing Shadow Flame. If you don't have access to tier 3 boots, then it doesn't really matter, you can get them before or after finishing Shadow Flame. The Mamine build is by far the best build in terms of scaling. It will give you the highest amount of damage in the mid to late game. It's also really comfortable to use since you just need to farm and you almost have infinite mana, so you don't need to be scared of running out of mana during a fight. But the one thing it does like is damage in the early game. So, your second option is to go for Essence Weaver. So you want to start with ER plus Longsword for Q evolution, then you buy 1 rod and 2 tomes for W evolution. After that, you finish your Risen Focus, then build Shadow Flame, then Deadcap, and finally Voice Staff. You can start your D-Blade at level 12 and Longsword at level 15. And for the boots, it's the same logic. If you have access to tier 3 boots, you do them before Shadow Flame. If you don't, then it doesn't really matter. Before or after, it's the same thing. This build gives you the cheapest Q and W evolution on AP Kaisa. It's perfect when you're fed in a lane and you want to snowball, or in a game where your team is losing really hard early and you don't have the time to scale. But the only issue is that you do lose some scaling power compared to Mamine. Alright, let's now go over the matchups. In mid lane, Kaisa has 3 hard counters. First off, Yasuo and Aurelia. The thing is that into melee matchup especially, Kaisa relies heavily on her ranged advantage to win this matchup. And since Yasuo and Aurelia can simply dash forever using minions, it's almost impossible for you to lane. Then we have Naafiri, which although the lane isn't the worst, the reason why she's there is because of her dogs that can block your W. So even if you survive the early game and you get your W evolution, her dogs will make it almost impossible to poke in fights. Overall, I would recommend banning Yasuo since he's the most popular one out of the 3. Also, when you're new to Kaisa mid, you can also, if you want, ban Zed. It's basically the same idea as Draven for ADC, where Zed is a really annoying matchup to play into but not impossible. It just takes time to get used to it. So when you get a bit more comfortable with Kaisa mid, I recommend to stop banning Zed and simply permaban Yasuo, which is a way bigger counter to Kaisa. Next up, we have the hard tier. These are all the hard matchup but not impossible. You have poke champions like Wayne or Rihanna that turn the lane into a 15-minute game of dodgeball where you try to survive as long as possible and simply farm, and then you have assassins like Zed, Fizz or even Annie that can burst you down in one combo if you're not careful. Again, for all these matchups, they might feel impossible when you start, but it's simply a question of time, since as soon you get used to their abilities, it becomes way easier to survive in lane. Then we have the OK tier. Most of the champions in this tier are just 50-50 matchups. Take Akali for example. Although she can burst you down really easily, you can also do the same because remember that Kaisa W gives true sight, which means that if you can land your W on her, even if she goes into her shroud, you can still see her. It's basically a skill matchup. If you're better and you get a couple kills, you can destroy Akali in lane. If, on the other hand, the Akali gets a couple kills, you're the one that's gonna get stumped. And this is true for every champion in this tier except for 3, Veigar, Ryze, and Vlad. Since these matchups are mainly you farming for 15 minutes because you can't really kill them without a gank, and if you position correctly and you're not greedy, they also can really kill you, so it's pretty much a farming lane. Alright, next up we have the easy tier. These are Kai'Sa's favorite matchups. Champions like Talia, for example, have overall pretty low range, making it actually pretty easy to win most of your trades at the moment you dodge their 1 CC ability. And matchups like Anivia, Soul, and Malzahar are pretty simple because they can't really kill you and they just give you a free lane without much contest, which is again perfect for a scaling champion. And finally, we have by far the best Kaisa mid lane matchups. First off, we have Kassadin and Galio. These two champions, you can simply bully them their entire lane, denying them CS and snowball when you get W evolution. Then you have Talon. Even though he's an assassin, for him to actually get on you, he needs to basically walk in a straight line, which makes it super easy for you to land your Q and W, and since you landed your W, you can still see him even under his ultimate. Now what's really important to remember is that this tier list is mainly and only for the lane phase, because as soon you get W evolution, you basically outscale 90% of the matchups in mid lane. I'm not even being biased here, it's just true. For example, if you come out slightly behind compared to a Wei, as soon you get Ludens, you can legit just one-shot him if he's ever isolated. And even if you face an actual scaling champion like Kassadin, Kale, or even Veigar, the thing with them is that their scaling only matters when they can actually fight. But if you kill their entire team with your poke before a fight even starts, their scaling is basically pointless. That's what makes AP Kaisa such a strong and annoying pick to deal with in the mid to late game, because she can win fights before they even happen. Alright, now since you're playing AP Kaisa, it's important that you know at least the basic key mechanic to the pick. That's why I'm gonna reuse what I said in a previous video, since it basically explains it perfectly. Alright, last thing I want to cover before we go over how to lane is a quick course on AP Kaisa mechanics. There are two main things you want to know and learn. First off, you need to learn how to use Kaisa RW. It means that you press W during your ultimate, which means that when you finish your ultimate, your W launches without having to wait for the 1 second cast time. It allows you to blow up people really fast when they don't expect it, and also it's hard to react to. But sometimes a simple RW won't be enough to one-shot someone, so there are two other variations that it's important to know about. The first one is to use your Q before your W. If you look at this E for example, I knew that I won't be able to one-shot her with a simple RW. So when I go in, I delay my W so I can use my Q to do extra damage, so when my W in passive lands, it finished the kill easily. The second variation is to do even more damage before the passive, so you use auto attack and your Q before your W. Take this Rumble for example. I knew that Rumble didn't have flash in this clip, so he has no way to escape. So when I go in, I use my Q auto attack to get 4 stacks, and then I use my W to finish the kill. The second important mechanic you also want to learn is how to use flash W. It's the same idea. The idea is to cut down the W cast time. So press W first, and during the channel you can flash to get closer to the enemy, making it super hard to react to. So in lane, it's pretty simple. You get 3 stacks with auto attacks, and then you press W first and then flash to surprise them and finish the kill. But that's not the only way to use W flash, there's also a second option. Since flash resets your auto attacks, you can also do the same thing if the enemy has 2 stacks. If they are low enough, you can get them to 2 stacks with auto attacks and then W flash and 1 auto attack. And like I said before, since flash resets your auto attacks, as soon as your W goes out, your auto attack will also go out. This is something I do a lot of time, and because people simply don't expect it. And there you go. Now the best way to learn those mechanics is to go in practice tool, put down a dummy, and just spam RW and flash W, so you can get the hang of it. Now of course, in a real game it will still take some time to get used to it, but the more you play it, the better you will get. Finally, discover the basics on how the lane is even supposed to go. So in the majority of your games, whether you face a melee or ranged character, you should have the push advantage, which means that the biggest danger in the first couple levels isn't the enemy mid lane, but the enemy jungle that can ruin your game with a single gank. So that's why you need to know where they are as fast as possible. What I do every game is slow push wave 1 and shove wave 2, while trying to deny as much CS as possible from the enemy laner. If I'm on red side, I'm gonna put a deep ward on the enemy blue buff. On the other hand, if I'm on blue side, I'm gonna put a ward on raptors or on the red buff. This will guarantee that I know which side of the map the enemy jungle is, since if the jungler does a standard bot to top clear, he should be on his second buff at around 3 minutes. If he's still not there at 3 minutes, it most likely means he's still bot lane, so you can not only inform your team on where the enemy jungle is, even though your bot lane will most likely still die to an obvious gank, but it also protects you from a gank. Then the next step is when you reach 900 to 1000 gold. At this point, you want to try to shove the wave so you can back to get your call, plus tier, plus potions, and TP back to lane. And after that, it's mainly farming until you get W evolution. But even if your objective is simply to farm, it doesn't mean that you can't help your team. Kaisa, even when building Mamune, still has a lot of burst damage. So if you see your jungle going for a play, or you see a potential roam top lane or bot lane, don't be scared to try, since again, a couple kills helps you get W evolution faster. And it also helps your laners win their matchups, which makes your job way easier if you don't have to carry your bot lane and top lane. Same thing applies to the 1v1 in mid lane. Even if you face a Syndra that on paper shouldn't die to you in a 1v1, they can always make mistakes, so if you ever see a Syndra being greedy and getting way too close, don't be scared to engage to punish them. Finally, when you get W evolution, congrats, you're now online. Your job now is to support your team as much as possible and look for any easy kill on squishies. You should spend most of your time in mid lane helping your team push for towers and objectives, and only go in silence when you need to clear a wave or respond to a split push. Now, before we go over gameplay, I want to give one final warning. Kaisa mid will most likely make you tilt a lot, because sadly the biggest weakness of AP Kaisa isn't a certain team or a champion or a system, it's your own team. It's sad to say, but it's simply true. You're gonna have games where you know full well that this is a free win if you can simply poke. The enemy team has simply no way to handle your poke. But even if you beg your team and type in chat to play slow and let you poke, they won't listen, they will keep forcing fight 1v2, and they will give the enemy team the only way to actually win this game. This is why it's important when you play a poke champion to focus on yourself. Forget the losses like that and simply focus on being consistent and getting out of lane without being too behind. If you have this mentality, you will climb really hard with this pick. Alright, with that said, I hope you enjoyed. Remember to subscribe and enjoy the gameplay. I love it when they're trying to be so aggressive, but the thing is, like, every time you use an ability on me, oh, close actually. He is. Came back. Nice. Did you see the difference in CS? Mainly, the only reason why there is a big difference is because he's trying so hard to attack me and poke me with abilities that he's losing focus on minions. That's the thing. Okay, that's basically the play. He's gonna try to block me with his with the ultimate basically. The way it works is that he's just gonna ult, then press his wall to block me and to proc electrocute. That's the only combo. That's the only combo to be scared of. That's it. You respect that one combo, you're fine. Look at the CS advantage I have over the Nivea. Kinda crazy. Just because... Oh no, do the dragon please. Ugh. Whatever. Nice. Only issue is I'm losing a lot in the mid lane. Alright, well. I think. I wanted to get the Q evolution. I didn't want to yeah, be greedy to overstay like that, but oh well, it's fine. Okay, I'm not gonna use CP here. No reason to. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna go bot lane and just like farm. Well, that was slightly unlucky. Oh, damn! He actually killed it. Nice. Well, now the Anivia is fed. Alright, red mid lane. Nice. Oh, come on. I thought I timed it correctly. Nope, I didn't. Look close. Oh, I survived. No way. Oh my gosh. Look at this. Rip. And there we go. Oh, close. Dead bird. Noise. Ah, no worries. I go back to lane. I go back to base. It's so fun. Like you can just force. You can just int. You don't care. Just force everything. There is no consequence. That's it. This I honestly feel like this need to get nerfed heavily because it's just not fair. It's not fair to have a legit GA that sends you back to your base whenever you want. Oh, okay, well, alright then. I didn't... Okay, that actually kills me. Not the best into the game, but... I mean, I'm still poking, so... I'm still hopping. I'm still hopping. Yeah, try to walk into this choke. Nice. Yeah, I don't know where that W went. A bit wide. GG, Noise. Noise. Nice game actually, pretty clean. But... And I did top damage. There we go, top damage, even with only 6 kills. But yeah, it just shows how much damage I can output. Like I didn't get that many kills this game, but just my poke alone is enough to really like make a big difference. Make it almost impossible for them to really play the game. They really don't have a way to answer our poke, so it's almost impossible for them to come back into the game. So at the moment you can get out of lane, and the game is not like your team is not too behind. It's really difficult for them to win. Just because of the sheer amount of damage you have, it's really difficult to play into. There you go. Play safe, farm, help your team, try to find some roams, and then just W, spam, win the game. There you go.